Imagine a place where the wind howls like a living thing, screaming across barren tundra at 70 miles an hour, whipping snow into blinding whiteouts that can last for days. A place so remote that the nearest town is hundreds of miles away. And supply flights are the only lifeline to the outside world. You're cut off from everything, family, civilization, even daylight for months at a time. Now imagine sharing that isolation with something else. Something that watches you from the shadows of the barracks halls. Something that doesn't belong. This is Tin City Long-Range Radar Site, perched on a rugged bluff high above the Bering Strait in western Alaska. At its closest point, Russia is just 48 miles across the water, closer than many Americans are to their neighboring states. Tin City is one of the most isolated military installations in the United States, part of the Alaska Radar System under the North American Aerospace Defense Command, or NORAD. Established in the early 1950s as a Cold War early warning outpost, it was designed to detect Soviet aircraft or missiles approaching over the Arctic. Today, it's a minimally attended site, operated primarily by civilian contractors under Air Force oversight, with the AN/FPS 117 radar scanning the skies 24/7. The site sits at over 2,000 feet elevation on the Seward Peninsula, exposed to some of the harshest weather on Earth. Sub-zero temperatures, relentless gales, and ice that clings to every surface. Crew rotations are typically 12 months long, unaccompanied. No families allowed. It's a tough assignment, but one that comes with hardship pay and the pride of defending the nation in a critical forward position. But starting in the mid-2010s and continuing into recent years, something changed at Tin City. Personnel, hardened Air Force technicians and seasoned contractors, began submitting transfer requests at an alarming rate. Not because of the weather, the isolation, or the long shifts. Every single one cited the same reason, often in vague terms to avoid sounding unstable. Unexplained disturbances in the barracks, whispers of footsteps in empty rooms, doors slamming shut on their own, shadows moving in corridors where no one was present, and worse, feelings of being watched, even touched, in the dead of night. These aren't urban legends pulled from thin air. The accounts come directly from those who served there. Multiple independent testimonies from personnel across different rotations. They describe a haunted barracks module, the long, modular building where the small crew eats, sleeps, and waits out the endless polar nights. Tonight, we're diving into their stories. 7 chapters of first-hand accounts that build to a chilling pattern. If you're in the military or a veteran, you know how rare it is for service members to admit to anything that could question their resolve. Yet these men and women did, and many regretted ever setting foot in that barracks. Chapter 1. Arrival at the edge of the world. I got my orders for a remote tour to Tin City Long-Range Radar Site. I had already pulled a year in Korea, so I figured Alaska couldn't be much worse. The hardship pay was solid. The tour counted double toward promotion points, and I needed a change of pace. I signed the acknowledgement without a second thought. The flight in was a slow descent into nowhere. Commercial jet to Nome, then a beat-up contractor twin-engine bush plane for the final hop. From the air, the Seward Peninsula looked like a frozen wasteland stretching to the horizon. The Bering Sea a dull gray slab on one side and an endless white tundra on the other. Russia was out there somewhere, just 48 miles across the strait, but you couldn't see it through the low clouds and blowing snow. Tin City sits high on a bluff, split into 2 camps. Upper camp has the radar tower and operations building. Lower camp down the slope holds the barracks module, power plant, fuel tanks, and helipad. Everything is connected by gravel tracks that vanish completely during whiteouts. The site manager, a weathered civilian contractor named Dave with 20 years in the Alaska chain, met us at the strip in a tract Hagland. There were 8 of us arriving that rotation. 6 contractors and 2 active duty Air Force techs, myself included. Dave gave the standard welcome brief on the ride up. Polar bear protocol, never travel alone, always carry the radio, watch for drifting snow-bearing doors. Weather here doesn't care about your schedule, he said. It'll kill you quicker than any intruder. We nodded like we understood, but most of us were still thinking about the extra pay and how cool it would sound back home. The barracks module is a long, rectangular building raised on pilings to keep it above the snowpack. It looks like a shipping container that grew legs and decided to live in the Arctic. Inside, it's tight but functional. Individual sleeping cubicles along both walls, a common area in the center with a kitchenette, couches, a big screen for movies, and some basic gym equipment. Everything smells faintly of diesel from the heaters and whatever frozen meals we microwave. My first night, I lay in my rack listening to the wind. The module creaks and groans as the temperature swings, metal contracting, insulation shifting. It sounds almost alive. I drifted in and out, still adjusting to the time zone, when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, deliberate boot steps on the composite flooring, coming from the far end and moving toward the common area. I figured one of the other new arrivals couldn't sleep either. "Hey, who's up?" I called out quietly, not wanting to wake everyone. The footsteps stopped instantly. No answer. I waited a few seconds, then climbed out of my rack and poked my head into the hall. Motion sensor lights had already dimmed to standby, but the corridor was empty. All cubicle doors closed. I walked the length of the module anyway, checked the exterior door, locked and bolted from inside, and even glanced into the storage room at the end. Nothing. Just spare parts, MRE cases, and cleaning supplies stacked floor to ceiling. I went back to bed telling myself it was the building settling. These modular units flex in the cold. Everyone knows that. Old-timers love to scare new guys with stories about Arctic ghosts. But I wasn't buying it. Not yet. The next morning over coffee, Airman Reyes mentioned hearing the same thing. She was the other active duty troop, a comms specialist out of Travis. "I kept hearing someone walking the hall all night," she said, pouring her second cup. "Like they were pulling security rounds or something." Dave overheard from the kitchenette and gave a dry chuckle. "You'll get used to the noises. Building's been here since the 50s, upgraded a dozen times. It talks to itself when the wind picks up. We let it drop." But I caught Reyes and me exchanging a quick look. Something about Dave's tone felt rehearsed, like he'd given that exact line before. The first week slid into routine fast. 12-hour shifts rotating between radar maintenance, generator checks, and monitoring the scopes for anything crossing the strait. The AN/FPS 117 dish up on the hill sweeps the sky constantly, feeding data back to Elmendorf and NORAD. On clear days you can see forever. Most days you can't see past the fuel bladders. Satellite internet is spotty, phone calls impossible unless you hike to the ops building for the Iridium. We played cards, lifted weights, watched whatever movies had been downloaded before departure. Isolation settles in quick when there's no escape. Then came the first thing I couldn't explain away. I drew mid-watch up in the operations building, alone with the equipment hum and the glow of screens. Outside, the wind howled steady at 40 knots, snow hissing against the windows. Around 0300 the radio crackled with static, then a faint sound underneath, like breath close to the mic. Not words, just slow, deliberate exhaling. I keyed the handset. "Lower camp, you copying? Anyone transmitting?" Silence. I tried again, different channel. Nothing. Aurora interference, I told myself. Happens all the time when the northern lights are active. I logged it as atmospheric and kept scanning. Shift change came, and I drove the Haglund back down the hill. As I stepped into the barracks module, the overhead lights flickered once, then steadied. The storage room door at the far end of the hall stood slightly open. I knew I had closed it the day before. We all make a point of keeping things secured against drifting snow finding its way inside. I walked down and pushed the door wider. The air that rolled out felt wrong, colder than the rest of the building by a good margin, like stepping into a freezer. The room was empty, shelves undisturbed, but the heaviness lingered. A pressure behind the eyes. I shut the door firmly and wedged a boot scraper under it for good measure. That night, back in my rack, I woke suddenly to the mattress dipping at the foot, as if someone had sat down heavily. My eyes snapped open. The cubicle was dark except for the faint red glow of the smoke detector. No one there. I reached for the light switch, empty space, blankets still tucked. Heart hammering. I sat up and listened. The module was silent except for the ever-present wind. I didn't say anything to the others the next morning. Didn't want to be the FNG who jumps at shadows. But when Reyes pulled me aside after breakfast and said, "Something sat on the edge of my bed last night," the words sent ice down my spine. We just stared at each other across the common area table, coffee going cold in our mugs. Whatever we had walked into, it already knew we were here. Chapter 2. Whispers in the Dark. My name is Sarah Reyes. Back then I was Airman First Class, Communications Systems Specialist, fresh off tech school, and my first assignment at Travis. Tin City was supposed to be a quick remote, 12 months, hardship pay, and a guaranteed follow-on to wherever I wanted. I volunteered for it. Thought the isolation would be good for focusing on my CDC study. Maybe knock out some college credits online when the satellite link cooperated. Being the only female on that rotation meant I got the small partition room at the end of the women's side, which was really just a corner of the module curtained off and fitted with an extra door for privacy. It felt like a luxury at first. My own space instead of an open bay. I hung a few posters, set up my laptop on the little desk, and told myself I could handle anything the Arctic threw at me. The footsteps started on my third or fourth night. Same pattern every time. Slow, measured pacing up and down the hallway, starting around 0200 and going until just before shift change. The sound was unmistakable. Boots on the flooring, not the soft shuffle of socks or slippers. I would lie there in the dark, eyes open, tracking the sound as it passed my door, paused, then continued to the far end and back. At first I convinced myself it was one of the guys doing perimeter checks or heading to the head. But no one ever opened the exterior door, and the lights never fully triggered. One night, I finally got fed up. I threw on my fleece jacket, stepped into the hall, and called out, "Hey, everything good?" The footsteps stopped the instant I spoke. The corridor was empty, motion lights already dimming. I walked the full length, checked every cubicle door, closed, and even looked in the common area. Nobody. I went back to bed telling myself it was the building, the wind, anything rational. By the end of the first month, we had all started comparing notes. 3 of us, the narrator from Chapter 1, myself, and one of the older contractors, admitted to hearing the same pacing. We brought it up casually over breakfast one morning. Dave, the site lead, just shrugged and repeated his line about the module settling. "You'll stop noticing after a while," he said, but he wouldn't meet anyone's eyes when he said it. Then the whispers began. I was up late one night cramming for my 7-level upgrade. Headphones in, focused on the study guide glowing on my screen. The rest of the module was quiet. Everyone else had turned in early because we had a big generator PM scheduled the next day. Out of nowhere I felt breath on my ear, warm and close, and a voice, male, low, almost gravelly, whispered 2 words directly into my head. "Get out." I tore the headphones off and spun around so fast I knocked my water bottle to the floor. The room was empty, doors still closed and latched from the inside. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I sat frozen for a full minute listening. Nothing but the constant low moan of wind against the pilings. I didn't sleep at all that night, kept the desk lamp on and the door locked. The next morning, I looked like hell. One of the contractors, Mike, the older guy who had done multiple Tin City tours, noticed right away. He pulled me aside while we were suiting up for the walk up to the radar building. "You heard it too, didn't you?" he asked quietly. I nodded, afraid to say it out loud. He glanced around to make sure no one else was listening. This place has history. Back in the 80s when it was still full Air Force manning, a tech went missing in a whiteout. Search parties turned up nothing. They found his parka a couple miles out, but no tracks leading away from it. Official report said disorientation, exposure. But some of the old hands. He trailed off, shook his head. "Just keep your head down and don't feed it attention." That night the whispers spread beyond my room. The narrator heard them in his cubicle. Leave, faint but unmistakable. Mike admitted later that he'd heard cold, breathed right against the back of his neck while he was checking fuel levels in the power plant. We started leaving more lights on. Started sleeping with earplugs, which didn't help at all. The words always came through clear. Like they weren't traveling through air, but straight into your mind. The touches came next. It began with brushes, light fingertips across your forearm when you reached for something in the kitchenette, or a graze along your shoulder blade walking down the hall. Cold, always cold, like dry ice. I thought I was imagining it until the night I was in the shower room alone. Water running hot, steam filling the small space, and I felt distinct fingers trail slowly down my spine. I jerked away, slammed the faucet off, and bolted out wrapped in a towel. The room was empty, mirror fogged except for a single clear handprint too large to be mine. I didn't scream. Didn't want to wake everyone and have to explain. But I sat on my rack shaking for a long time. Within days, 3 of us had felt physical contact. Mike woke once with a cold hand pressed flat against his throat. Not squeezing, just resting there, heavy and deliberate. He said it felt like it was taking his temperature. We radioed the support office in Nome, kept it vague. Unusual stress in the crew, requesting welfare check. The response came back to tough it out. That polar night hadn't even started yet and things would settle. But whatever shared the barracks with us was only getting started. And the sun was about to disappear for 2 full months. Chapter 3. The Shadow in the Corridor. My name is Mike Harlan. I've been an architect contractor since 2005, maintaining radar sites across the Alaska chain, Kotzebue, Barter Island, Point Lonely, and Tin City more times than I can count. By the time I arrived for my third Tin City rotation in late 2016, I thought I'd seen everything the Arctic could throw at a man. Extreme cold, equipment failures and -60 wind chill, polar bears sniffing around the fuel bladders. I figured the stories the younger troops were trading about footsteps and whispers were just new guy nerves. I'd heard similar complaints before, and they always faded once people adjusted. Polar night hit us hard that year. The sun dipped below the horizon in mid-November and didn't show its face again until late January. Days became a dim gray twilight around noon, then straight back to black. The temperature plummeted. The wind never stopped. And the snow piled so high we had to dig tunnels to reach the generator building. That's when the shadows started. The barracks hallway runs the full length of the module, narrow, lined with cubicle doors on both sides, lit by motion sensor LEDs to conserve power. You walk down the center, lights flicker on ahead of you section by section, then fade behind. Simple system, works fine. Except sometimes the lights would trigger when no one was moving, or a patch of darkness would shift just out of sight, like someone had stepped around the corner a half second before you got there. At first I wrote it off as tricks of the light, fatigue, whatever. Long shifts in perpetual dark mess with your depth perception. But after a couple weeks I couldn't ignore it anymore. I'd be heading to the head in the middle of the night, boots soft on the flooring so I didn't wake anyone. And I'd catch movement ahead. A tall, man-shaped shadow sliding along the wall. Gone by the time the next light panel brightened. I'd speed up to catch it. Nothing. Empty corridor stretching both ways. One night I called out, half joking, half annoyed. "Who's screwing around? Knock it off." My voice echoed back flat. No answer. No shuffle of someone ducking into a cubicle. Just the low hum of the heaters and the wind outside. Then the power glitches started. The generators are rock solid, dual redundancy, auto switchover. But every few nights we'd get a 5 or 10-second brownout. Lights dimmed, electronics beeped, then everything steadied. During one of those drops I was standing dead center in the hallway, waiting for the backups to kick in. Total darkness swallowed the module. And in that darkness, right behind me, I heard breathing. Slow, deliberate, wet sounding. Close enough that I felt the air move against the back of my neck. I spun around swinging. Hit nothing but cold air. Emergency lighting snapped on a second later. Hallway empty in both directions. My heart was hammering so hard I could hear it over the wind. The next morning I found the storage room door standing wide open again. We'd made it a rule to keep it shut and latched after the new folks started complaining about cold spots. Inside, a stack of MRE boxes had been shifted, like someone had been digging for something specific. Cases pulled out. Lids popped on a couple. Nothing missing, just disturbed. I restacked everything, closed the door, and wedged a folding chair under the knob. We ordered a cheap motion-triggered trail camera on the next resupply flight. Little thing meant for hunting. Runs on 8 batteries. Mounted it high in the corner overlooking the hallway and storage door. Checked the card a week later. Hundreds of clips. All 8 of us walking past at various times. Lights triggering normally. Not a single frame of unexplained movement. Whatever was pacing the hall knew how to avoid being caught. The feeling of being watched settled and permanent. Didn't matter if you were cooking, working out, or just sitting on the couch. Hairs on the back of your neck stayed up. Even up in the ops building during solo watch. Miles of empty tundra in every direction. I'd hear faint banging from below, like someone pounding on the locked lower entrance trying to get in. I'd radio down to the barracks. Anyone at upper camp door? Always negative. No footprints in the snow when I checked at shift change. The worst came during a 3-day ground blizzard. Visibility 0. Winds gusting over 70 knots. Sight completely socked in. We were all confined to lower camp. No reason to risk the road up the hill. We kept busy with PMs inside the module. Played cards. Tried to stay sane. Power held steady, heaters running hot. Around midnight we heard 3 distinct knocks on the exterior door. Heavy, Deliberate. Pus. Then 3 more. Dave grabbed the 12 gauge we keep for bear defense, racked around, and cracked the door against the howling wind. Nothing out there but swirling white. Any tracks would have been erased in seconds. He shut and bolted it, gave us a shrug that didn't reach his eyes. 10 minutes later, the same knock sounded again. Except this time, they came from inside the hallway, halfway down toward the storage room. We fanned out with flashlights and whatever we could grab, mag lights, a wrench, the shotgun. Cleared every cubicle, the shower room, under bunks, the mechanical spaces. 8 grown men searching a single modular building top to bottom. Not a soul besides us. That was the night Reyes put in her transfer request. Cited family emergency. But we all knew the truth. She wasn't the only one thinking about it. Whatever was sharing the barracks with us had stopped hiding. And it was getting bolder. Chapter 4. The Cold Touch. My name is Jake Torres. I'm a power production specialist, staff sergeant at the time. And I rotated into Tin City in early 2018, right after the previous crew had bailed out early. Word had already started circulating through the Alaska radar community. Tin City was getting a reputation. Guys were putting in transfer requests only a few months into their tours, citing everything from family issues to medical. Nobody said the real reason out loud, but the whispers were there. The barracks were bad news. I didn't believe any of it. I'd done 2 remotes already, Wake Island and Shemya, and both had their share of ghost stories. Isolation does things to people. I figured it was the same deal here. Long, dark winters. No women, no booze, no escape. Minds play tricks. I told myself I was tougher than that. The new rotation was smaller. Just 5 contractors and 2 active duty. Me and a young airman fresh out of tech school. The site had already started scaling back overnight manning because of the turnover. We flew in on a clear day, rare for February, and the place looked almost peaceful from the air. White hills, blue sea, the big radar dome gleaming on the bluff. On the ground it felt different. The wind hit you the second the plane door opened, sharp enough to cut through your parka. First week was uneventful. Routine maintenance, shift handovers, getting settled. The barracks felt normal, maybe a little worn. A few creaks and groans at night, but nothing out of the ordinary. I slept solid, ate well, hit the gym equipment hard. Told myself the stories were exaggerated. Then the cold spots started showing up again. You'd be walking down the hallway and suddenly step into a pocket where the air dropped 20-30 degrees. Breath fogging in front of your face, even though the heaters were cranked and the thermometer on the wall read 70. We'd all pause, look at each other, joke about it. Arctic air leak, somebody would say. But we started avoiding those patches without admitting why. One night I woke up freezing. Not just normal cold, bone deep, the kind that makes your teeth ache. My blankets were piled on the floor at the foot of my rack, neatly folded like maid service had been through. I always sleep tucked in tight, military corners, because that's how I've done it since basic. No way they fell off on their own. I sat up fast, scanned the cubicle. Empty. Door still closed. I got up, folded the blankets back on, and tried to laugh it off. Wind must have gusted hard enough to shake the module. Yeah, right. The next morning, I mentioned it over coffee. 3 other guys nodded like they'd been waiting for someone else to bring it up first. Blankets pulled off, cold spots moving around the common area, lights flickering for no reason. One of the contractors, a quiet guy named Lee who'd been on a couple previous remotes, admitted he'd felt something brush his arm in the shower room. Cold fingers, deliberate. That's when the touches escalated. It started small. A light graze across your back while you were at the stove heating soup, like someone reaching past you for a cabinet. A tug on your sleeve when you were sitting on the couch watching a movie. Always cold. Always gone when you turned around. We instituted the buddy system without ever calling it that. Nobody went to the head or the storage room alone anymore. We laughed about it, called it bear protocol for ghosts. But we did it anyway. Lee was the first to break. He woke up one night screaming loud enough to bring the whole module running. We found him sitting up in his rack, sheets tangled, chest heaving. There were 4 distinct red marks across his sternum, long finger-shaped welts, already bruising. He swore something heavy had pinned him down, held him by the chest so he couldn't move or breathe right. Said he felt freezing breath on his face and heard a low voice say, "Stay," right against his ear. We took pictures. Clear handprints, too big to be any of ours. Sent them up the chain with a vague report about personnel welfare concerns. Got a response telling us to stop pranking each other and focus on mission. Lee put in for emergency leave 2 days later. Mental health reasons. They approved it fast, no questions. He was on the next flight out and never came back to Alaska. The rest of us were stuck. 12-month tour. No early outs without a damn good reason. Then it tried to take me on the tower. We were doing routine maintenance on the radar array, climbing the 200-foot structure to check for ice buildup. Wind was moderate, maybe 30 knots, but the ladder was iced over and treacherous. I was halfway up, harness clipped in, when I felt a hard shove between my shoulder blades. Not a gust, a distinct push, palms flat, trying to pitch me forward off the rungs. I slammed against the ladder, arms wrapping tight, boots scrambling for purchase, heart in my throat. I yelled down to my belay partner. "Did you see that?" He hadn't seen anything, just me suddenly hugging the tower like it was my best friend. I finished the climb shaking, told the crew when I got down. That night, clear as day, a voice drifted through the common area while we were all sitting there. Fall. We didn't sleep in the barracks for a week after that. Moved cots up to the ops building. Took shifts watching the scopes from there. But the mission doesn't stop. Generators need tending, fuel levels, snow removal. We had to go back eventually. Whatever lived in that module wasn't content with scaring us anymore. It wanted us hurt, or gone. And it was patient enough to wait until we let our guard down. Chapter 5. The name on the wall. My name is Chris Nolan. I was a staff sergeant in 2019. Prior infantry with 2 combat tours under my belt before I cross-trained into radar maintenance. When I got orders for Tin City, I actually laughed. Ghosts? Haunted barracks? Come on. I'd slept in burned-out buildings in Helmand with incoming orders. Pulled guard in places where the real monsters carried AKs and RPGs. Some old Cold War site in Alaska with creaky floors and tall tales wasn't going to rattle me. I'd heard the rumors circulating around Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson. Tin City was cursed. Guys were bailing mid-tour. Transfer requests stacking up for the same vague reasons. Command had started sending smaller crews, leaning harder on contractors. Even talking about going fully unattended except for weekly fly-in maintenance. But the site was still mission-critical, too close to Russia to let the radar go dark. So they kept filling billets, and I volunteered. Figured a year of hardship pay and peace and quiet would be a nice break before I put my retirement packet in. We flew in during breakup season, when the snow starts melting into slush and the wind still cuts like a blade. The crew was only 6 total. 4 contractors and 2 active duty. Me and a young troop straight out of tech school who looked like he was still waiting for his first shave. The barracks module felt smaller than the photos, more worn. Scratches on the walls, patched flooring, that permanent diesel and old sweat smell baked into everything. But it was clean enough, heaters worked, and the satellite link was actually decent that first week. The usual stuff started almost immediately. Footsteps at night, cold spots drifting through the common area, lights flickering for no reason. I ignored it. Told the kid to ignore it too. Polar night's coming, I said. That's the real enemy. Everything else is just noise. But by midsummer, when the sun never fully sets and you lose track of days, the activity picked up. Whispers turned into clear words. Blankets got pulled off again. One contractor woke with scratch marks down his arm. 3 parallel lines like fingernails. We documented everything, sent photos up the chain. Got the standard response. Focus on the mission. No evidence of pranks. Consider the psychological effects of isolation. Then we decided to do a deep clean of the storage room. Snow had drifted in under the door during a storm, and the site lead wanted everything inventoried before resupply. We pulled out crates of MREs, spare parts, old toolboxes that hadn't been touched in years. That's when we found the scratches on the inside wall paneling, deep gouges in the composite material, like someone had clawed at it with bare fingers. At first it looked random, just damage from moving gear. But when we shined a flashlight straight on, words emerged. Help me. Below that, a name and year. S.G.T. Harlan, 1987. The room went quiet. One of the contractors, older guy who'd been around the chain since the 90s, went pale. That's not funny, he muttered, looking at us like we'd set it up. Nobody laughed. The scratches were old, discolored, layered under years of dust. No way they were fresh. That night the voice changed. Instead of "get out" or "cold," we started hearing a low, pained murmur drifting through the vents. Harlan so cold. Clear enough that we all froze in the common area, staring at each other. The young airman bolted to his cubicle and didn't come out until morning. I did some digging on the satellite link, quietly, during my shifts. Pulled up old unclassified incident reports from the Alaska Radar System archives. Found it. Sergeant Michael Harlan, radar technician, assigned to Tin City LRRS in 1987, went missing during a Category 3 whiteout in December. Last seen leaving the barracks module for a generator check. Search parties found his parka and one glove 2 miles downwind, but no tracks leading away from the site. No body. Official cause: disorientation and exposure. Case closed. Next of kin notified. After that, the activity zeroed in on the storage room. Doors we'd latched would be found open. Boxes rearranged into crude patterns, circles, lines pointing toward the scratched wall. The temperature in there plummeted permanently. Frost formed on the inside even when the rest of the module was warm. We tried everything short of burning the place down. A couple guys had care packages with sage. We did a half-ass smudging ceremony, more to humor them than anything. I stood there with my arms crossed, thinking it was ridiculous. We even said a prayer over the wall, asked for peace, whatever. Felt stupid doing it, but morale was tanking. Next morning, new scratches had appeared right below the original message. Fresh ones, raw composite showing through. Our names. Every single one of us on rotation. Carved in uneven block letters. Different handwriting styles, different depths. Mine was dead center. Nolan. I stared at it for a long minute. Felt the blood drain out of my face. Infantry don't scare easy, but that hit different. Personal. Like whatever was in there knew exactly who we were and wanted us to know it. Within 3 days, every one of us had submitted transfer requests. Cited adverse living conditions impacting readiness. Command pushed back at first, but when the photos of the wall went up the chain, along with medical complaints of sleep deprivation and anxiety, they approved most of us. The contractors exercised their out clauses. Site went to minimal manning after that. Fly in techs only. No more overnight crews in the barracks. I flew out on the next available bird and never looked back. Still don't know if Harlan's spirit is trapped there, angry, lost, or something worse. But one thing I'm sure of, that module isn't empty, even when no living soul is inside. Chapter 6. Echoes from the past. My name is Dave Klein. I was the site lead at Tin City for over a decade. Multiple rotations stretching from the late 90s all the way to 2020. Civilian contractor with ArcTech. Former Air Force myself. Enlisted as a radar tech back when these sites were still blue suit man wall to wall. I've wintered over a dozen times across the chain, but Tin City was always the one that stuck with me. Not because of the weather or the bears or the isolation, though those were bad enough. It was the barracks. I knew it from my very first tour, and I kept coming back anyway. I downplayed the stories every time a new crew rotated in. Told them the footsteps were the building settling. The cold spots were bad insulation. The whispers were wind through the vents. I had to. If I'd told the truth right up front, nobody would have stayed long enough to keep the radar turning. Mission first. That's what they drill into you. NORAD doesn't care if you're sleeping next to something that doesn't belong. They care that the scopes stay hot, and the Russians know we're watching. But I knew. My first winter, there was 1998. Full manning back then, 15. Sometimes 20 troops packed into that same module. We had a sergeant named Michael Harlan. Good troop, solid tech, quiet guy from the Midwest. Liked to read paperback westerns and keep to himself. One December night we got hit with a ground blizzard that shut everything down for 3 days. Generators running fine, plenty of fuel, but visibility 0 and wind gusting past 80 knots. Harlan drew the short straw for a midnight fuel level check on the bladders outside the power plant. He suited up, radioed out, and stepped into the whiteout. Standard procedure. 10-minute check-ins. Stay on the guideline cables. He made his first call. At the tanks, levels good. Then nothing. We waited 15 minutes, 20. Started calling. Static. Search parties went out at first light when the wind dropped. Found the guideline snapped halfway between the module and the power plant. His parka snagged on a guy wire a mile downwind. One glove still in the pocket. Tracks. Wind scoured everything clean. No body. No sign he'd turned back or wandered off course. Just gone. Official report. Accidental exposure. Case closed. But we all knew the tracks should have shown something. Even in a blow, you leave marks for the first few hours. His ended like he'd been lifted straight up. After that, the barracks changed. It started small, footsteps in the hall when everyone was accounted for. Doors we'd close standing open. Then the whispers started calling his name. Harlan, help. Faint, like it was coming through the vents from far away. Some nights you'd hear 3 knocks on the exterior door during storms. Open it. Nothing but snow. Close it. And the knocks would come again from inside. Every rotation since has felt it. Same pattern, like clockwork. First couple months quiet. Just settling noises. Then the pacing starts. Whispers build. Touches. Shadows. By midwinter it's personal. Blankets pulled. Name scratched. Cold hands letting you know you're not alone. Crews break one by one. Transfer requests pile up. Command approves them eventually because they have to. Can't force people to stay if they're claiming mental health. I watched it happen over and over. Good troops, tough contractors, men and women who'd faced worse than darkness. Didn't matter. That module wears you down until you can't sleep, can't think, can't stand another night wondering what's breathing behind you. I kept coming back because someone had to hold the site together. Someone had to brief the new arrivals, keep the generators running, make sure the radar stayed up, and because part of me felt responsible. Harlan was my troop once. I sent him out that night. The last straw for me was 2020. Smallest crew I'd ever seen, just 4 of us riding out the pandemic lockdown. No resupply flights for weeks. Activity went through the roof. Full body apparitions at the end of the hall. Tall figure in old cold weather gear, face always shadowed. It would stand there watching until you looked directly at it, then vanish. Radios would pick up faint calls. Klein Cold, my name, in Harlan's voice, clear as day. I finally put in my own transfer. Told the company I was done with Alaska. Flew out in spring 2021 and never went back. Some nights I still hear the footsteps. Still feel the module sway in wind that isn't there. Still wonder if Harlan's trapped, trying to warn us away, or punishing us for leaving him, or just lost and wanting company. Command knows. They've known for decades. But Tin City's too strategic to abandon. Rush is right across the water, and the radar has to spin. So they send new crews. Smaller now. Fly in only when they can. Minimal overnight. But the barracks is still there. Waiting. Claiming its guardians. One rotation at a time. Chapter 7. The Last Watch. My name is Kyle Reed. I was an airman first class when I got sent to Tin City in the summer of 2022. By then the site had already earned its reputation inside the small world of Alaska radar techs. Nobody volunteered anymore. You got assigned because your name came up on the manpower roster and you didn't have enough rank to fight it. I was fresh out of tech school, still shiny, and thought a remote tour would look good on my records. Hardship pay, promotion points, stories to tell. I had no idea what I was walking into. When we landed, the place felt abandoned even though the radar was still spinning. The crew was only 4 people total. 2 contractors who'd been flying only for months. 1 senior Air Force NCO acting as OIC, and me, the new body to justify keeping any overnight manning at all. Command wanted to prove the site could still support a small permanent presence after all the turnover. The barracks module hadn't been lived in full-time for over a year. Dust on the counters. Freezer half empty. A stale smell under the diesel heat. We tried to make it feel normal. Clean top to bottom, stocked the kitchenette, set up a watch bell. First couple weeks were almost peaceful. Long daylight, routine maintenance, no major storms. The usual creaks and groans at night, but nothing I couldn't write off as an old building on permafrost. Then August hit, and the activity woke up like it had been waiting for fresh occupants. It started with the footsteps again. Louder this time, almost angry. Heavy boots marching the hallway end to end. Pausing outside each cubicle door as if checking who was inside. We'd sit in the common area playing cards, and the pacing would start. Back and forth, until someone finally yelled, "Knock it off." The steps would stop for a few minutes, then resume slower, deliberate. The shadows came back worse than any previous account I'd heard. Full silhouettes at the end of the corridor, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing the old stacked cold weather parka with the fur ruff. Head always down, face hidden in shadow. It would stand motionless under the dimmed lights watching. As soon as you looked straight at it, The figure was gone. No footsteps running away. No door closing. Just vanished. We mounted cameras again. Better ones this time. Wide angle, infrared, hardwired into the generator so they never lost power. Reviewed the footage every morning. Same result as before. Hours of empty hallway. Then sudden glitches. Static snow for 3 to 5 seconds. Right when we knew the figure had appeared. When the picture cleared, corridor empty. Whatever it was didn't want to be recorded. The knocks returned during the first big storm of fall. 3 heavy pounds on the exterior door. Pause. 3 more. The NCO grabbed the shotgun. Opened up into the howling dark. Nothing. Bolted it shut. 10 minutes later, the same knocks echoed from the storage room. Inside the lock module. We searched. Found the inside wall scratched again. Deeper this time. The old message still there. Help ME. SGT Harlan 1987. But fresh gouges underneath. Read. My name. Carved fresh overnight. That same week the radios started picking up voice traffic on guarded channels. Faint, broken, but unmistakable. Transfer or stay. Always on our primary freak. Always when we were all together in the common area, so nobody was transmitting. We logged it, sent the audio files to Nome. Got told it was atmospheric skip or equipment malfunction. The final night none of us slept. We were sitting in the common area under full lights. Doors to the hallway wedged open so nothing could hide. Around 0200 every radio in the building, handhelds, base stations, even the spares on the charger, crackled to life at once. Static, then the same low male voice, clear and close. You don't belong here. We stared at each other. The NCO, a grizzled tech sergeant with 15 years in, went white. That was it. We packed go bags, shut down non-essential systems, and radioed for emergency extraction. Cited severe environmental stress impacting crew safety. The next morning a Bosler BT-67 out of Nome braved marginal weather to pull us out. All 4 of us submitted transfer requests the same day we hit Kotzebue. Same vague reason. Unexplained disturbances in living quarters. Command didn't fight it. Within weeks Tin City went to full fly-in status. No more overnight manning in the barracks. Techs arrive at dawn, work their shift, fly out before dark. The radar still spins. Data still flows to NORAD. But nobody sleeps there anymore. I've read the old reports. Talked to a few of the previous rotations off the record. Everyone describes the same presence. A watchful guardian, maybe Harlan, maybe something older that claimed him. Some think it's protective, trying to keep people from suffering the same fate, warning them away. Others think it's territorial, punishing anyone who invades its space. Either way, the barracks won. The site remains operational, but the module sits empty at night. Lights off, heat on low, doors locked against the wind. And whatever walks those halls keeps its solitary watch over the Bering Strait. Alone again. The way it seems to prefer. I still wake up sometimes hearing boots pacing a hallway that isn't there. I never volunteered for another remote.